Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Imogen Spencer-Chapman. I'm a social worker at the NSPCC National Child Trafficking Advice Centre, and I'm here this afternoon to give you a brief overview of our service and how our service might be of assistance to you in your work. I'll be giving a definition of child trafficking and look at the ways that children in the UK are exploited. I'll go through some of the indicators that can help professionals identify children who may have been trafficked and the different ways and the ways in which you can respond to any concerns you might have. And then I'll try and talk for about 30 minutes during the session, after which there'll be half an hour for any questions that you may have. Okay, so So who are we? We're a service that was set up in 2007 by the Home Office and Comic Relief because there was a concern about that children who were trafficked into the UK from other countries were not being identified often and not being given adequate protection. And so our service was set up as an advice service so that professionals with concerns could call, and the other role of our service was to promote awareness amongst professionals of identification and responding to trafficking. We have 6 members in the team. 5 of us are qualified social workers. We've got a range of experience, international work. I've worked in the voluntary sector and in children's services, and I've worked in Eastern Europe and in East Africa as well. We also have a police liaison officer in our team who has had 30 years of experience in the police force in a range of different roles, and his role is really to work with the police. So what do? We coordinate cases. We take referrals from professionals, so any professional with a concern for trafficking can give us a call and just tell us the concerns they have, and we can talk it through with them and discuss what might need to be done in order to try and make sure that the appropriate action is taken to safeguard that children and to allow further assessments. Sometimes we might have to challenge professionals to try and get some action to be taken where one professional thinks it needs to be taken and another disagrees. So we have an advice line, we have information online, we have leaflets specific for different professionals, social workers, health visitors, staff who work in A&E, people who work in prisons, and we also deliver training in all different settings. Our key role really is to advocate for children from a child protection perspective, and with casework we can go to statutory meetings, we can go to strategy meetings, professionals meetings. We can write expert reports. We've been instructed by solicitors over the years to do that. But really we try and work across, we have a real focus on multi-agency work, and often a trafficked child could have 10 different agencies and professionals involved in their life, and they won't always be communicating, so we can assist professionals to do that. We're a first responder on the National Referral mechanism, which is a national system that was set up to help identify and protect victims of trafficking, both children and adults. We are a service that is able to refer into that system. Only certain professionals can do that for children, social workers and police and a few other professionals as well. Just skipping a slide if any of you can see them. A few slides, I've missed the last one. We, at the centre of everything we do is the child, and then we work with professionals, not with the child, so it's more about advocating for a child. We also are involved in quite a lot of national strategic work. We report a lot of data about child trafficking to the Home Office and police bodies as well, and we sit on ministerial steering groups and we influence policy on trafficking. And lots of different groups that we've been asked to sit on, including a Department of Health working group, which was advising about the development of training modules for health professionals. There's information at the end of the slides about how to link on to those training modules. And most recently we're getting involved hopefully with international strategic work, and some of my team are going to Nigeria and Ghana in a few months to deliver training to border agency visa staff over there. and we're hopefully going to do some work in Romania and Vietnam as well. I've got a slide just about the Laming report, with a quote from the Laming report that says the basic requirement that children are kept safe is universal and cuts across cultural boundaries, and that every child living in this country is entitled to be given the protection of the law, regardless of his or her background. We like to put this slide into our presentation because sometimes we find that professionals get confused about what rights children have when they're from another country, when perhaps they or their parents haven't got legal immigration status in the UK. And sometimes professionals wonder whether immigration law supersedes children's law, and because of that concern, sometimes the actual child protection concern can get lost. So we really like to reiterate that actually children's laws should supersede every other law, and protecting a child should be the first and foremost thought in your mind when there's a concern. So what is child trafficking? A very simple definition really is just that child trafficking is the movement of a child for the purpose of exploitation, and that any child transported for exploitative reasons is considered to be a trafficking victim. And quite crucially, children cannot give informed consent to being trafficked. We've had cases where a child has said, but I knew what I was coming to do, this was agreed beforehand. But if they're under 18, the internationally accepted definition is that a child, whatever their own understanding of it is, can't give informed consent to their exploitation. And quite simply, one of our key messages is that child trafficking is child abuse and requires a Section 47 response. So the different ways in which children can be trafficked and exploited in the UK, and just to clarify, our service only deals with children that are trafficked to the UK from another country, or we also deal with cases where children are at risk of being trafficked out of the UK. There are other services within CEOP that work that deal with cases of internally trafficked children. So how are children exploited in the UK? So many different ways, and children can be exploited in more than one of the ways that I've listed in this slide. So we've got criminal activity. So children are exploited in cannabis farms. They are forced to pickpocket, to beg, to burgle. Sexual exploitation, domestic servitude, exploitative labour such as working in nail bars, catering, agricultural work. Children who are trafficked could be in an informal fostering arrangement, and that might be for the purpose of benefit fraud, where the child's identity is used by multiple adults for claiming benefits, be it housing or child benefit, and often those children might not be well looked after by the people whose care they're in because there's no particular attachment to that child. Children might be used to move drugs. They might be trafficked for forced marriage. They might be trafficked for the removal of organs. We've not had we as a service don't know of any cases of children being trafficked for the removal of organs, but we know that it does happen in some parts of the world. And a repetition here, use of a child's identity for benefit fraud. Let's move on to the next slide. So just some data for you. As our service has data, but it only represents the cases that we know about, and so this data is often fed into the Home Office's data and added to data from the UK Human Trafficking Centre. But we're aware that we don't know about every case. So in terms of where children are being trafficked to the UK from, we've got 38% from Asia, and the vast majority in the last 5 years, I would say, from Vietnam. There are also children from China, from Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, and a number of other countries as well. But predominantly, we have a large number of children trafficked from Vietnam at present. But trends do change over the years. 33% from Africa, 23% from Europe, predominantly Eastern Europe. 1% from the Middle East, 1% from South America, no cases from from North America. However, in recent weeks we've started to hear about children being trafficked from North America across to the UK. 1% from the Caribbean, and 3% of cases we haven't known where the child is from. And the types of exploitation, from the graph, if you're looking at it, the largest number of cases we've had is for sexual exploitation, which may come as no surprise. But then also high up there is cannabis cultivation, which has been a big issue over the last 5-6 years. There are some people speculating that number might decrease because criminal gangs who run the cannabis farms are moving to other countries or finding different ways and not bringing children and adults over to grow the cannabis. We've had 37 cases where there's been a concern for legal adoption and fostering, so that's small children. And so for health visitors, nurses, people who are midwives, that's a particularly relevant issue. Benefit fraud, 74 children where there's been a concern, and again that's a very relevant issue for health professionals who are in the community. 52 for labour exploitation, 58 for criminal activity, 88 for domestic servitude, and again health professionals going out and to people's homes are in a prime position for seeing children who might be in a domestic servitude situation. Forced marriage, 16, begging, 4, exploitative entertainment, 1, and theft against a property, 7. We've also recently added some categories like theft against a person. There are a lot of risk indicators which sometimes they can be for trafficking, but equally they might not be of any concern at all. There are lots of cases we've had where people have seen a number of indicators, but actually it's when further assessments have been done, it's assessed not to be a trafficking situation, but still a safeguarding concern for a migrant child. So for our service, where a child is a foreign national child, and there are also other concerns, that this is an indicator. If they've been brought or moved from another country, if they have false documentation or no passport or ID, that is also a very clear indicator. They might be with an adult, but it's unclear what the relationship is. And I think we've had a number of calls from health visitors who've talked to us about this scenario, seeing a child with an adult and just questioning who that child is and who that adult is in relation to one another. We often get cases where an adult insists on speaking for a child, and I think in the health sector, when a child is visiting a health professional in a hospital or the professionals that seeing them at home, that's also a big concern, and we would always say that if an adult insists on doing that, try and get an interpreter where possible. There might be concerns about the relationship between the parent and the child. It might be the parent, but with any safeguarding concern for a child, you'd be looking at the relationship between the parent and child. The child might be orphaned or separated, also known as referred to as an unaccompanied minor. They might appear to have a disproportionate fear of professionals. Equally, they might have a disproportionate fear of the adult that they are with. They may or may not be registered with a GP. That's a bit confusing, but sometimes somebody who's exploiting a child might go out of their way to make it look as though this child is fine and they're enrolled at school, registered with the GP, to try and stop people looking, but equally they might not be, which is an indicator. The child might be homeless. A new child might be seen at an address. Again, we've had lots of calls from health visitors about this kind of concern. A child might be found in a brothel or a sauna, involved in criminal activity. A child might be reported to be working in catering, in nail bars, caring for children, cleaning work or agricultural work. The child might possess money or goods not accounted for, which suggests that they're either earning a lot of money or that somebody is grooming them by by providing them with lots of things. There might be gaps in their personal history unaccounted for. I've got a case of a Vietnamese girl at the moment, and currently out of 18 months in the UK, there are 9 months that she's not accounted for, but she's described some very concerning things about a house that she was living in, but she says she was only there for 2 weeks. We're wondering whether she might have been there for a lot longer, and that there are things she's unwilling to disclose about her time in that house. And for all the health professionals, there are so many health risk indicators to be aware of. Physical symptoms, a young person might be pregnant, they might have STIs, they might have experienced sexual or physical assault. They might have unexplained injuries or scars, they might be suffering from depression, anxiety, anorexia, self-harm, or something that they would describe as a family problem, and also things like attempted suicide. They might be using drugs. Sometimes traffickers will force young people to use drugs as a means to subdue them and control them. They may have undergone FGM. They might be unwilling to disclose information about their experiences or have real difficulty in engaging with professionals. As a professional, you might be really unsure about a person's age. They might be presenting either as an adult and you think, actually, I think this person's a lot younger, or they might be presenting as a child and could possibly be older. We've had cases where children have been branded with things like tattoos or markings, symptoms of PTSD, and poor dental health. Children. We've recently had a case of a child who, before being trafficked, had braces fitted, and during her trafficking experiences over a couple of years, no one had a look at her braces, and she had a lot of pain as a result. And also physical assault can cause lots of problems, and just tooth decay as well. And if you're looking at cases, if there's somebody who seems scared of somebody or scared of going on holiday, I'm sure you're all aware of the issue of forced marriage. A big concern for many of particularly our cases from Vietnam, which usually relates to working in cannabis cultivation, but also sexual exploitation, is a child who might be in debt bondage, and they might not present in a way you would expect perhaps a victim to present, and might disappear and be wanting to go back into that situation because they're in debt bondage and they're fearful of repercussions on their family back home. They might have a huge fear of authorities because they've been scared by their traffickers about what professionals will do to them. They might put them in prison or send them back home. And young people might be controlled by adults through other ways, through issues to do with honour, family honour, physical and verbal threats, witchcraft, and also ritual oath-taking. We've had a number of cases, particularly from Nigeria, of girls who are forced to take ritual oaths before being brought to the UK, and are forced to take promises that they won't reveal any of the information about what happens to them, or where they're from, or who they're with, which is a way to protect the trafficker. Use of language and interpreters. Language meaning can really get lost when you're using an interpreter, and it's just really good to be aware of make sure you're actually talking to the young person as opposed to the interpreter, and just be conscious of the fact that language, we have a very wide vocabulary in English, and a child might not have the same understanding of what you're saying, and things can get lost through the interpreter, so you have to be aware that assessments might take a bit longer, and things have to be checked more regularly. So if you have, as a professional, if you have a concern, and here I'm thinking about health professionals, really the most important thing is to speak to your designated child protection lead. And if you're not satisfied with their response, it might be that they're not aware of some of the specific issues relating to child trafficking. You can call us as a service, we can talk it through, and if you need some support in actually doing further assessments or relaying the information to your manager or child protection lead, we can sort of help with that and support you. And make a referral to children's services is really, really crucial, because it could be a very serious issue of child abuse. And if you find that that the children's services are not responding to your referral in the way that you would expect, call us again and we can open up that case and contact the local authority and make a referral on your behalf. And often, because we're from a child protection agency, that adds quite a lot of weight to the referral. Yeah, and in your work, try and promote a multi-agency response. Find out who else is involved in that case, speak to them, see if they've got information, and also share information with everybody. Yeah, consider the cultural and language issues, and also refer to the risk assessment matrix. There are lots of tools these days, and the risk assessment matrix should help guide you in thinking about what questions you might want to ask to further your assessment. At the end of the presentation, there are lots of slides with lots of links to different documents that could help. Consider recommending an NRM referral. So I mentioned at the beginning that our service, the Child Trafficking Advice Centre, or CTAC, can make referrals into the NRM for children. If a social worker or police officer won't do this, just raise it with any social workers or with us, and we can make a referral into this system. And if a child is recognised under the NRM as being a victim of trafficking, that can help make sure that the child gets the best possible response from children's services and is looked after. And also, if there's an immigration issue, it can help support them in regularising their immigration status. And just think about what additional support the child could access. There are lots of services out there, not always the right service, but you can call us and see if there's anything that you haven't thought of. Yeah, so the resources for health professionals, I've put at the top one the e-learning module, which was developed by the Department of Health and Platform 51. Maybe you're already aware of this, but I'd really recommend following that link and doing the session. I think it takes about half an hour and there's a few videos. And there's some leaflets that you can read to accompany that. Now, I've actually sped through this a lot faster than I anticipated. So if you want, we could now... Oh, actually, before we stop for questions, I just wanted to let you know that we have a young people's participation group, and that's actually really fundamental to our service. And young people have been involved in the service since its development, before it even began. Young people who my manager had worked with in a previous service, she was a key worker and did one-to-one work with them and set up a group, came over and helped sit on our advisory board, talking to key stakeholders in our service about what they thought professionals would benefit from in terms of promoting awareness about child trafficking. And the group is currently made up of 10 core members. We've, for the first time, got more boys than girls. And all of the young people were trafficked from other countries for the purpose of sexual exploitation. I think in our group we've got sexual exploitation, cannabis cultivation and domestic servitude, and also young people who experience labour exploitation on journeys and other forms as well. And they get involved in delivering presentations with us. So if you want to take any of this information back to your teams, you could. We'd be happy to come and deliver presentations for free to your teams. And sometimes a young person will come with us and talk to you as well about to help give you advice about what they think from their perspective professionals should be doing. And they've also been involved in artwork and creative writing. They give advice to us and to other professionals. And they also get involved in doing giving consultation, policy and research. And recently have done interviews for the Times newspaper. We've got hopefully something coming up for the Observer. So lots of ways they get involved. And more recently, one young person in particular is doing peer support sessions with new cases that are referred to us. And one of the quotes from our young people was that our life experiences are true, but professionals just can't or won't believe us. And I think that's always sticks with us, because because they're young people who've been through horrific experiences, and many have had the problem of just not being believed by several different professionals, and I think it can really affect them in many ways. And that's it. So lots of time now for questions and answers.